going to be watching this final pod here. You can see we have Ben going first on Tymna Malcolm, Alana going second on Tymna Kraum, Comedian going third on Tivit, and Zachary going fourth on Slicer. So we actually are going to have someone joining us here for a guest cast. We have Zain. Ben, as you guys know from before we started the stream, we have is the top player in this event with 25 points. They have 5 wins in total. You have Alana, who has historically been a great player at Punt City. She went undefeated in the Swiss. She consistently top 16s lots and lots of events. We have Comedian, who just recently won a Mox Masters event and is consistently in top 16s. You saw him in the Final Four of Oktoberfest that recently happened. And then Zachary with the Rogue deck of all Rogue decks, what I would consider the fan favorite for a pod like this. He just barely slipped into top 16 by breakers by 1%. Like, very barely made it into top 16 with Slicer, a deck that has legs.
I've been talking about this list since last night. I saw it being played in the tournament. I saw them consistently winning games. I think this deck went 3-3. There was 2 Slicer decks at the event. I started brewing it last night. I think this is a real deck that you should be bringing. I might bring this to Mox Masters myself. The basic idea is you play the deck. You play Slicer for the backside for 3 mana, and it has First Strike and Haste. You come in, you hit someone, and you just start passing it around. After you've played the Slicer turn 1 and you're passing it around, your whole game plan is to just drop stacks pieces until everyone dies. Seems pretty good, a little linear, but what are they going to do?
Now this pod, I'm pretty interested in seeing what happens because we have 2 Esper decks who want to slow the game down a little bit, especially Tivit. Ben on Tymna Malcolm, he could end the game quickly on Esper, but what I've seen is it just does take it to the later turns. Blue Farm is fast, and surprisingly, if the other 2 players want to slow the game down, they have to deal with this Slicer who's going to be hitting for 6 every single turn, every person's turn, not even turn cycle. So this is a board texture that I've just never seen before.
Yeah, this is unprecedented. Not to mention that it's been a long time since maybe I'm speaking for just myself and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I have not seen a Malcolm Tymna deck perform, period, let alone perform this well. So there is some consistency going on from Ben's side of the table that is not to be reckoned with. Yeah, mental misplay. Alan with Alana and Ian in the same pod. 2 heavy hitters, absolutely always placing top 16 in every tournament they've been in, constantly fighting for that top 4. Alana, almost infamous for losing the top 16, bringing her best to this table. I can't wait to see how well she performs. She always puts a good win and a good performance up there, but always just barely misses the mark. So I can't wait to see her today. Yeah, and absolutely. Miss Hodom rooting for Tivit. Tivit is not the only Tivit at this tournament, constantly putting up results. Tivit is ridiculously insane and consistent in the way that as soon as he lands, if he resolves through those red blasts that hopefully come from Slicer, that would be hilarious. If they resolve and they hit the table, it is immediately backbreaking in the way that Tivit affects the table.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We had to fix the echo there. Everything should be taken care of now, so we will be all set to start this game for the top 16. Yeah. We had a little bit of mic trouble there, but we've got it going on. So we've got Zain, we've got Shauna, and we've got me here for this final 16 pod. So, Zain, we were talking about Slicer a little bit earlier, right? And we were talking about how, as a deck, it's mainly useful for its backside, giving your opponents your Slicer and goading it and getting swings in.
Actually, the front side. The backside is what you cast it for. It's 3 mana to just cast. So you get it out turn 1. That's usually the game plan. And then you start passing it around in the first turn cycle. People are taking 6 damage, probably not respecting you that much. And then you just drop like a Torpor Orb, Grafdigger's Cage, etc. And people are in trouble. Now, what I'm interested in is that Tivit also plays some of these cards like Grafdiggers. I think Tymna Malcolm plays similar cards like that as well. They want to slow the game down a little bit to win on an axis like that. So if 3 people are trying to do this and the Slicer who's just aggroing people down, I don't know what's going to happen in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw earlier when we had Ian on before that the Grafdigger's Cage that Ian put into play ended up being hugely impactful to the game. So much so that actually there was a Rog Tevish Polymorph player that could not play their game and polymorphed into the Grafdigger's Cage. When you've got decks like Esper Malcolm that maybe utilize things like different graveyard effects, reanimate effects, maybe Tymna, Kraum that tries to Underworld Breach, if you have those stacks pieces in play that prevent you from doing that, it's very, very hard to get your combo through that. Something cool to note is that Ben is playing a Tymna Malcolm Esper deck that really hinges on things like Doomsday, Thassa's Oracle combos, Mnemonic Betrayal. Mnemonic Betrayal actually plays through Grafdigger's Cage because it exiles the cards from the graveyards in order to cast them. But it looks like we're going to start here. Comedian, if I am not mistaken, may have started with a 4, mulliganing down to 4. We can see these players looking very confidently. Ian looking very attractive with no sleeves on his dress shirt. Yeah, big fan. So starting off the game here, we see Ben is shortcutting a land here, putting a land into play, casting Mana Crypt, using that Mana Crypt to put a Malcolm into play, and then playing a Mox Diamond, playing around something like a Mindbreak Trap here, playing the Malcolm as his turn 2 spell, not caring if the Mox Diamond gets countered or not.
Famously, Ben's Moxfield list, I think he's the primer author with Chaotic Spark. It's called Mulling for Malcolm, so clearly he's succeeded in getting the turn 1 Malcolm out. The deck is just plays Malcolm, plays Tymna on turn 2, you just start drawing cards. A pretty simple game plan, very powerful. You're getting both types of resources you need in this format.
Yeah, absolutely. Shauna, do you want to update us on what Alana is doing?
Is that a Cavern of Souls?
No, that. It is a Cavern of Souls.
Is that a Cavern of Souls from Alana naming
humans? Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. And then we have a Soul Ring into Arcane Signet, looks like.
Yeah, I believe that is the case.
I believe that's a Soul Ring. Almost positive.
So Ian mulled down to 4 here. So I'm very curious to see what Ian is going to put into play here with such a low hand. Usually it's some mana rock, some mana advantage. We have an Ancient Tomb. Taking 2 life directly into what? A Talisman, a Signet, maybe?
Probably. I'm going to guess Talisman.
Here's the top.
Okay.
That's much worse than what we were thinking.
Well, I was gonna say Talisman into Fish is pretty good.
Yep, using the floating mana to spin this top. Hopefully find some fast mana here.
Yeah, something. I mean, honestly, if you're going to mull down to 4, having something in play like a Sensei's Divining Top is very good because it helps you make sure that the cards you're getting from your draw steps are the cards that you want. So, this might not be the most advanced board state that Ian could have in a deck like Tivit, but this is still going to help him as the game progresses, as long as we're not losing to something on Alana's board or even Ben's board before the game can even start.
Yeah, Gren can see good catch. That's a Mana Vault underneath that Arcane Signet. So that is now a tapped Mana Vault. So not as much mana that we were thinking on Tymna Kraum. Kraum Mox exiling
Tybalt's Trickery
on Slicer's board, tapping both for an immediate Pyretic Ritual.
Yeah, this is just a turn.
That gets miscast immediately by Ben.
This
wow.
is the turn 1 Slicer plan. Oh no.
Ben did not even hesitate with that miscast. Look at him. He's like, I know what this deck is doing, and I'm not going to let that resolve. That could be something very, very major. If not the Slicer, it could be a huge stacks piece. Oh, but we're going to is that a Pyroblast on the Malcolm before Ben's turn?
Incredible.
Wow. Alana kind of knowing that this deck mulls to Malcolm and needs to get its Malcolm plan going in order to garnish some extra mana and gain those treasures for some big, huge turns. So Alana's saying, before you get to your turn, I'm going to just get rid of that thing.
Not to mention this immediate, just stomping of we're immediately stopping every single attempt to gain some presence. This is giving comedian Ian a valuable time to get back from that tiny mulligan.
No, the thing is though is that Alana still gets to untap, right? If Ben doesn't pull something off here, so she could have just had that Pyroblast, knowing that someone's going to try to play something like a Malcolm or a Tivit, and I want to be able to have some type of way to answer it. So if Ben doesn't pull off something impressive here, Alana could have a great you kept a Cavern of Souls hand and played it first. You're clearly going to be doing something significant with your turn.
Cavern of Souls is a new technology being put out by Matt Sperling and such. They name humans. You play a lot of different humans in the deck. Grand Abolisher, Lavinia, Tymna, all the Opposition Agent, I believe, all become uncounterable.
Awesome.
It's just, you can tap them for different colors. So it's basically a tricolor land for all the large amount of humans you're playing.
Yeah, and look at this. Zachary being really cool here, using the Epic Storm token to denote that his Chromox taps for red. That's
incredible.
actually, I haven't seen that yet, and that's
very
really
smart.
cool to put in play like that. But so we see that Ben here, on his turn, he has hit his land drop, so he's got a lot of mana here, but doesn't seem like he has much that he can do with it besides recasting Malcolm. But And it looks like that's what we're gonna do. So yeah.
Fantastic.
So Alana setting basically time walking. Time walking Ben here and saying like, hey, I'm gonna ruin your entire game plan and make you tap out to play your Malcolm again.
Yeah, immediately though, with these early game plans being stopped, we have to look at life totals. We see a mana crypt on Ben's board. We see a tapped mana vault on Alana's board. While these things may seem insignificant, with a slicer on the field, damage is going to come into play very often, and Tivit's just going to slow that game plan down. It's a mid-range deck that's going to keep controlling these decks so they can't win through the slicer.
Ooh, Alana electing to just pass the turn, holding open 3 mana. I wouldn't be surprised if this is an intuition.
Opposition agent as well.
Oh, opposition agent too. Yeah.
Uncounterable
Uncounterable op agent. Yeah, this is a very cool pod composition already, and I'm interested to see where this is going to go. Ian hitting his land drops, which is important on a mold of 4. I wonder if we spun a land to the top with top, and we're going to see now if we have any significant plays coming out after this. We have 3 mana available to us. We might just, say go, do something similar to Alana.
We just said go, yep.
Yeah, see what the Slicer player is going to be doing.
Let's see if the Slicer player can get Slicer out. Oh.
All
Passing
right.
slicer for the backside.
Yeah. So notably, Slicer is 5 mana if you want to hard cast it. Otherwise, you can cast it transformed from the backside for only 3 mana. So we get the Slicer into play here, and then just start implementing our game plan.
Zane, what does this guy do?
Okay, yeah. So Slicer, first strike haste. It has living metal. So if you're playing it for the backside, it is a creature on your turn only. Notably, you don't want it to be in this form ever after the first turn, because if you're going to drop equipment on it, the equipment falls off. I know this deck does play a lot of equipment in the deck, so he's going to hit someone, and it's going to transform at the end of combat, Sorry, Hasbro. It's going to convert at the end of combat, and then on the flip side, it says I believe something like at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep or something, you can give it to that player. It's goaded, so they have to attack someone else. It has double strike and haste, and very importantly, the designers thought of everything. You can't sacrifice Slicer. It says it on the card.
Yeah. So the reason why that's notable is because this Slicer is just going to get passed around the table and continuously be goaded, and it's never going to come back and hit you because you're the owner of the card. And so it's going to become very significant as the game goes on and as players take damage. And what happens is that the Slicer player continues to play basically the mono-red prison strategy, where it's going to put in a lot of stacks pieces and a lot of things that stop the other players from playing the game, and the Slicer just slowly kills them and drains them down as the game continues to go on.
Yeah, 6 damage a turn from the commander. Yeah, see, we're seeing the Slicer go to the Tymna Malcolm player. Now, this is very interesting because Ben could just play Tymna and start getting Tymna draws off the Slicer, so that's important.
I wonder if that could be, if we just play the Tymna here, we get 2 draws off of this Slicer, which actually is a huge benefit to us, especially because Ian doesn't have a blocker, and the Malcolm can go swing at, Alana freely. So we're going to see what happens here. And Alana, notably, no one searched their library yet. So if it's an intuition or an op agent, we're going to see what happens at end step here on Ben's turn if nothing significant comes into play.
I'm putting Ben on Doomsday right now. He has 2 islands. Maybe he wanted to swing with the Malcolm, get the treasure in Doomsday for the turn 2. It doesn't seem like that's what's happening. Looks like we're just going to draw with Tymna. The Slicer's going to benefit him here.
Yeah, if I was maybe in Zachary's position, I would. Well, it's kind of a horse apiece. Yeah, you have to give it to somebody. So, yeah. Oh, and it looks like we're swinging the Slicer at Alana.
Why did we give the Slicer to the Tymna player? Was that a choice?
Well, we have 2 Tymna players and both have the ability to
Tivit.
cast them.
You give it to everyone,
Yeah.
and you do 6. You're gonna do 6 times 3, 18 commander damage across the table.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can see that they put out another life counter here to denote the commander damage because Slicer is going to be very significant as the game progresses. So looks like we have Malcolm swinging in and we have Slicer swinging in. We're going to get 2 Tymna draws here, create a treasure token, and then the table's probably going to be reading Slicer very consistently here, trying to figure out what it does and pass it around as the game goes on. But right now, Ben in a pretty commanding position. We have a Tymna, we have a Malcolm. Even though the Malcolm got pyroblasted, we're still drawing more cards than the rest of the table, producing more, win conditions and things, or card advantage and things like that. So we're going to see where this takes us. It looks like Ben is drawing his 2 cards and has things to put into play. Is that a
Changeling Outcast?
Oh.
Yuriko Staple Changeling Outcast is now here and is now a pirate, notably.
And you can
There's
see
the op agent.
There's the
on
op
board, predicted, best player in the room right now.
yeah. So that was a good call by Zain there. We have the Cavern of Souls. That op agent ended up doing
Not
Nothing,
much.
because
Yeah.
no one tutored, but it is a stacks piece on the board now. Significantly, though, like the slicer player enjoys stacks pieces, so maybe this op agent is going to help the slicer player implement their plan here. It can still be destroyed, but it can't be sacrificed, so the table's incentivized to try to remove it, and all that Zachary has to do is produce more mana and keep putting slicer into play. Like, look at Alana's life total. She's already at 30, and we're on turn 3, and we haven't used anything that really hits us for life totals besides the mana vault that's in play, and it's only been 2 life. So this slicer is already putting significant damage on the board.
Yeah, good note, Curry Magic. Op Agent didn't steal Ian's Flooded Strand last turn. Is that correct?
It's not worth. Generally, it's not worth just stealing a land from a player. That's not good enough. You want to snipe a better tutor with your op agent if you're going to commit to it. And stealing a land from the player who just isn't doing anything right now. You want them in the game. You want them dealing with Ben, who had a very strong start. It's just not correct to just take the land from him.
Sounds good. And now we're moving to combat with a Slicer, an Op Agent, and a Tymna on board, not attacking yet. But this Slicer is really just benefiting these Tymnas more than anything. It does not feel good to be Ian right now.
No, and Alana and Ben are actually just taking haymakers at each other with this slicer. You can see who's taken the most slicer damage at the table now. Alana's already taken 6. Ben's already taken 6. Ian's taken 3. This thing is swinging hard, and no one has any answers for it, as it seems. Oh, but we're going to Imp Seal here on Alana's turn, maybe set up for some...
Mind Sensor coming down? No.
Tapping
Oh,
for
the Ligma.
Archivist.
We have the Ligma in play. So similar to the Sugandi strategy, Shauna, do you know much about the Archivist of Ligma?
This one I'm not too familiar with, unfortunately.
Oh, man. So, Ian here having some type of card advantage here now, getting the Ligma into play, drawing some extra cards. We have the top still. We're floating a colorless mana, so we can float the top and know what we draw off of the Ligma. So, Ogma, I got to stop saying that. It's just, oh, man. But yeah, so now Alana has a very pretty demanding board now, right? We have the Tymna, we have the Op Agent, we have a lot of mana. So Alana and Ben looking in pretty commanding positions. The Slicer though is gonna really pressure their life totals, take them off of things like Naws. Are we?
Op Agent coming down from Ben here.
And with a Force of Will from Alana pitching Mnemonic
he doesn't
Betrayal.
have the Cavern of Souls for his Op Agent.
No, wow.
Unfortunate, just bad player there.
Look at
Bad
these
deck building.
bad deck building. Yeah, and look at Alana kind of flexing on the table with some of these foils,
The
some of these
Judge
really nice
promo Force
cards.
of Will,
Yeah,
extremely
Judge promo
nice.
Force of Will. Someone denoted earlier that this is even though this is a full proxy event, the cEDH community is really impressive with liking to own their cards, blinging out their decks, and things like that. Oh, and here's Gunner here again,
Classic.
clipping our the archives.
Unfortunately, it just sucks to look at Comedian's board here. We know that Tivit is resilient. We know that Comedian's a great player, but this Archivist was obviously something that we found to try to get back in the game. But with an Op Agent and possibly, a second attempt at an Op Agent, we're not seeing many tutors here to get back in the game.
Yeah, this card actually isn't going to draw Ian very many cards with an Op Agent in play, unless Alana is the only person who's going to be tutoring for the rest of the game.
Now, an avenue that these other players have at the table is this Slicer getting passed to them so they can hit Alana and just take her life total down. She is on a clock now, and she can be eliminated very early. She's already on, 6 damage of Slicer? It'll be 12, maybe 18. Yeah, she could be dead by Ben's turn.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that she is incentivized to attack because she has a Tymna out, right? So she's going to continuously be tapping out her creatures unless she's willing to lose her Tymna to block a Slicer. You're going to your life total is going to just deteriorate. And if you're taking 6 damage each turn, you have 6, 12, that turns into 18, you're already at 6, you're dead.
Funnily enough, I just realized this. I think the Slicer also affects Ian's Time Sieve game plan. If people are at low life totals, I don't know if he's going to be able to execute the Time Sieve plan and get a correct amount of artifacts to end the game.
That's actually crazy to think about. That's actually insane. Because Tivit kind of works on a similar axis to Tymna Malcolm or decks like that, where you need the players to have a certain amount of life totals to get a certain number of combats to denote a certain number of artifacts, so you can keep sacrificing them to take extra turns. And if you can't do that because the players have such low life totals, you can't win the game unless you're doing some, Displacer Kitten, 3 fairy loops or things like that. So it makes Ian's game plan much, much harder. So it looks like on Ian's turn, we have Lana pass the Slicer over to Ian, and we untapped. We had an Exotic Orchard for as our land for turn. So luckily, we're hitting our land drops. We don't need fetchables. Being a 3-color deck, it means that you have more lands that aren't fetchables. That seems to be working out for Ian. Ian kind of pointing to his Archivist. Let's actually peer in at the players and see how these politics are going. Look, everybody's hands are up. Everybody's throwing things around. different hand signals. It's like sign language out here on the table.
Slicer player Zach, he's just having a chuckle. He's just watching the chaos unfold.
They're trying to determine. Slicer is unironically the most political card in cEDH at the moment. Look at Zach. He just gets to sit back, have his arms crossed, and just see what happens. And look,
And
we get a
looking
peer at Ian's hand.
We have a delay, we have an enlightened tutor, and a land.
Not looking good for Ian right now. He really needs to get something going. His Tivit game plan is just falling away as the slicer just hits.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that Ian passing the slicer back to Zach now. This slicer's putting in a lot of... I'm so impressed with this card, actually, at this moment. So it's really cool to see.
I was telling you last night, dude, this is the future. You guys were all laughing at me. You're like, Zane's gone crazy. He had too much to drink. I didn't drink anything last night. Slicer is crazy. It's going to be on my Mox field. It's unlisted right now. I talked to the pilot. We're brewing together. Full credit to him. He told me all the tech I need to know. You'll probably see me on this deck in the future.
Yeah. Ryan's saying, how does Slicer finish the 1v1? Well, see, the thing is here is that you can just hard cast it for its 5 mana cost, because once it transforms, they can sacrifice it or get rid of it, and you can just swing in because it has haste.
So actually, yeah. So in the 1v1, notably Goad doesn't work. They can hit you with your own slicer, but at that point, you have a couple more damage on them, so you're able to just kill them.
Yeah. And you can see here, the Slicer player putting in that Grafdigger's Cage that we alluded to earlier in the game. So now this takes Alana off of any Underworld Breach plan. We know she imp-sealed last turn. This cage could have been a huge play coming down from Zach here. It could really hinder the rest of the table's game plan. And especially like players like Ben who might need to, crack a Doomsday pile. First off, we can't even search our library because of the Op Agent. And also, if you're getting like the Thoracle and the Reanimate and the backup for it, you're not going to be able to utilize that with a Grafdigger's Cage in play.
Looks like all of this card advantage needs to be done through Tymna, and Slicer is helping with that game plan, but he's also taking it down very, 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 very quickly.
And notably, somebody swung the Slicer at Ben. So Alana's life total wasn't being pressured there to try to take her off of her game plan. They're spreading the Slicer love around a bit. So Ben would have the option here to kill Alana if maybe, I don't know who it was. It might have been Zachary who didn't swing at Alana, instead choosing to swing at Ben. So Alana gets to untap here if Ben doesn't win this turn.
I believe it was Ian who swung at Ben.
Yes. So we can see here Ben, very importantly, moving to combat before we cast any spells. We see Ben's hitting a consistent number of land drops, not, maybe even mana flooded. We don't know what's in his hand. But look at the politics that this card is bringing to the table. So much table talk, so many talking, trying to determine where we're swinging it, and Zach just nodding. Just
happy to be here. Look at my slicer. Look at my Grafdigger's Cage. Probably look at the Torpor Orb I'm going to play next turn.
Yeah, maybe even a 3-ball. Like the deck gets kind of insane from this point on. All right, so let's see what Ben does here. We got 2 treasures from the Malcolm because of the from the Changeling Outcast.
You got it.
Yeah, and so we get some draws here from the Tymna. Ben's going to have a full hand here. So what will he play? It will be interesting to see. And Alana kind of sitting in a weird position here. If Ben gets rid of this opposition agent, is able to crack a Doomsday pile, do something significant, we got the Forcible out of Alana's hand already, so she probably doesn't have more interaction and is tapped out.
Not to mention we know about the delay in Ian's hand, but Ian has to be very selective about what he chooses to counter here.
No way.
Drannith Magistrate coming down. I don't know if these players understand what is happening with this slicer. You cannot be doing this. Notably, this Op Agent is stuffing Ben. I know the Tymna Malcolm deck, it draws a lot of cards, but it relies on tutors to actually end the game. In Esper, your win con density is very low. You got Doomsday, Thoracle, Lab, and that's like what's going on.
What is that?
That's a Siren Storm Tamer. Come on. You guys,
yeah.
Of course you asked the pirate player what that is.
All right, so now we're going to move down to Alana's turn here. With a Drannith Magistrate in play, it means this Kraum can't come down and maybe, fight the Slicer a little bit for future turns, give you more blockers or things like that. So now that we can't get the Kraum out, we're just developing with Tymna here. Alana imp-sealed for a card last turn, so we have to find out now what her game plan is. Otherwise, she could very easily die to this Slicer in this turn cycle.
I mean, Tymna Kraum on so many sacrifice effects. I would love to see a Calling the Week here to just get rid of this thing.
The thing is that you cannot sacrifice Slicer. It says it on the card.
What is wrong with this game?
Once again, they really knew what they were doing when they made this card.
This is
I
unbelievable.
first saw this card at MTG Summit in November, and I was like, this is very interesting. I don't want to dedicate time to it, but it looks interesting. And now I'm seeing it in action here, so.
Yeah. All right, so we see Alana moving to combat here. Now the table talk is going to proceed. We're going to decide who we're attacking. Ben declaring some blockers here, probably for the Slicer. Losing the Drannith Magistrate.
The Drannith is just a blocker for the Slicer.
Okay, and you can see no commander damage was denoted here by the slicer. So we're putting up blockers now basically to defend our life totals because the table is starting to become aware that if we don't have something to block, we will slowly start dying.
Funnily enough, it might be too late. The deck plays equipment that makes Slicer evasive. It's going to start getting passed around.
Oh, my lord.
We have Thonking asking, was there any Thrash Tymna at this event? I don't think I've seen it on stream at all.
I don't think there's any Thrash Tymna in the top 16. There were a bunch in the Swiss rounds. Those lists will be going live at the end of the event. You'll be able to view the bracket. You'll be able to view the pods, the compositions, all that stuff on eminence.events/Silicon Dynasty.
Team turn 3 stating that Siren Storm Tamer better get sacrificed to protect the lethal slicer swing before this game is out. Oh my god.
So here we can see, I think we're moving to Alana's main phase 2. And she's got a card in hand, trying to determine whether or not she wants to play it. We can kind of take a view here and see what she's got going on. Look she's just holding that card, thinking carefully. And Ian flirting with the table a little bit, trying to see if he can flirt his way to a win.
From this angle, we can definitely see the light leave Ben's eyes as he realizes that death is imminent from Slicer. It's unpreventable.
Okay, so here we can see Seth, our judge, in the chat and also monitoring this game. Maybe we need to have a talk with them. Answering questions on stream while judging the game. We have him caught on 4K. All right, so here we can see Alana deciding still not to play this card. Oh, maybe it was determining whether or not she wanted to play the Adawara or use it to bounce the Slicer. Interesting. But it looks like we played the Adawara as our land for turn. So now we're going to see how we develop this way. We have 5 mana available to us, and we just imp sealed last turn. Tapping 3 mana here. Could this be something significant, or will it just be a Slicer blocker? Oh, a Rhystic Study.
Rhystic Study, notably the best card in cEDH. That's a pretty good position to be in.
Everyone in chat saying Seth is just built different. Yeah, so Rhystic Study is a card that we've been very adamant about on stream here that wins games by itself. When you resolve a Rhystic Study and you get one into play, the game quickly swings into your favor. The only problem is that this makes Alana look more and more like a threat as the game continues.
Yeah, I hope she realizes that she might be just dead before her next turn.
Yeah, if you can politic against the rest of the table here and like really convince them that they need you to keep you around for some significant reason, then I feel like playing this could be safe. But right now the table, they can't really pressure Zach very much at all.
We're spinning this top on Alana's end step as Ian continues to look for a way to make an impact on this game.
Yeah, and now we're moving to Ian's main phase here. You can see Ian putting his own Cavern of Souls.
Naming Tivit.
He names rogue, so notably in this deck, you play Cavern of Souls because Tivit's a rogue, Op Agent's a rogue, Notion Thief's a rogue. Very good stuff going on here. Cavern of Souls, great card.
Yeah.
Local Cavern of Souls expert, Zain.
Well, Zain is the Tivit expert. Actually, if you guys look at Tivit very closely, the artist actually painted a rendition of Zain on the card.
Yeah, that's actually what happened. Little known fact. That's why I made that deck.
So now we're gonna see what Ian decides to do here. We have Tivit mana available to us, if I'm not mistaken. So we could get the Tivit out now, but what's the benefit to it? I don't know. It is a 6/6, so it will kill a Slicer if it blocks it. So,
but the Tivit also dies.
Yeah, the Tivit does also die.
Yeah, unfortunately, blocking a Slicer is not Ian's main prerogative right now because he is not the target.
So I wonder where we're going to be swinging this Slicer at this point in time.
Yeah, last swing went to Ben, so maybe we're trying to spread out the love a little bit.
Interestingly enough, if I was Zach right now, I would be swinging at Ian because I don't want to get into a 1v1 with Ian. That's the worst person I could get into a 1v1 with.
Yeah, not to mention that Ian has a bunch of interaction that has not revealed itself to the table yet. Ian has done nothing. As far as the table knows, Ian has a bunch of unknown cards in hand that are most likely reactive.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Spectre, I'm glad that we have some clarification here. There is a little bit of delay on the stream, but the Adawara did not go back to hand. She ended up playing it as the land for turn, so there was not any derived information from that or anything significant like that. So luckily, we don't have to worry about a situation like that. So now Ian has moved to combat. We've swung our Slicer, but we did not swing the Archivist of Ogma, leaving it open as a blocker, it seems, and leaving 5 mana available, not casting the Tivit.
Definitely curious to see that one because Ian, I don't really know why Ian would protect his life total at this point, knowing that he is the least amount of threatening on the table. You might want to get in that, even if it's just one. You might want to get the damage in when you can.
He may have realized
that he doesn't want to die first to this slicer player because he does have the best matchup in the 1v1. I don't know what's going through his head. I am very interested to see what's about to come down. Is another stacks piece, equipment? What are we seeing here?
Yeah, because the slicer player has done nothing really besides play the slicer and put a
And the
single
Graph
Graph
Digger's
Digger's
Cage.
Cage. Yeah, so
And Slicer at what, 5-6 mana at this point? Definitely threatening.
yeah, absolutely. So we're going to see how this game progresses and how things proceed. But funnily enough, I know we've been talking about it a lot, but the slicer player has really kind of taken over this game. Like the biggest impact on the game happens to be this one card. And nothing else, and it's affecting the game in such a huge way that the rest of the table has to adhere to what it's doing.
This card is absolutely bonkers. All Zach has to do is just play this card, play this Graph Digger's Cage, any stacked pieces he may find along the way.
Something that you can notice here too is if you watch Ben very closely, you can see his hands are starting to kind of shake and he's starting to twitch. This is something that might denote that he might have a way to win the game here. Otherwise, he's one slicer hit away from losing.
Well, Ben actually does that a lot. I wouldn't read too much into it.
Well, I have this player cam here, so I'm gonna.
I've been watching him throughout the tournament, so.
So we're going to see what happens here on Ben's turn. If we view the table here, it looks like we're going to move to combat immediately right away. You can see everybody leaving up blockers now at this point. Except Ben's going all in with the attacks here, getting as many Tymna draws as we can. Maybe he sees the writing on the wall and can tell that if he doesn't pull out a win here, he's very quickly just going to die to the slicer by the rest of the table. Ben being the number one player in this tournament, if this slicer eliminates him from the round, this would be a huge momentum swing.
Unfortunately, with all of this this swinging going on and Slicer doing most of the work, we have not seen a win attempt yet, and we have Alana on a Ristic Study. Trying to attempt this first win is definitely daunting. No matter how much mana you get, no matter how many pirates gain you treasures, there is still a very big risk to going off first, especially into a Ristic Study.
Something else to denote, too, is we saw that the slicer player, Zach, put a Tibalt's Trickery underneath that Chromox. I'm almost guaranteeing you that Zachary plays all the other red counter spells as well, things like Pyro, things like Reb. So when you're playing a deck like Esper Malcolm, if you're going to attempt to win here, I mean, against a Tymna Kraum deck, a Tivit deck, and a red deck that plays the red counter spells, you have to be very, very careful about the spells that you cast because you're facing a lot of interaction. And players are holding up mana, when you have someone like Comedian who mulled to 4, they most likely kept a hand that's playing to not lose, not playing to win.
Not to mention that being in Zachary's position and thinking about what initial card to exile under that Chromox, maybe it was so easy to get rid of Tibalt's Trickery because we had one of those red blasts in hand.
Yeah, you can let your guard down when you know that you have some other backup. And if we look at his board, he kept open 5 mana here. So we have all the red mana available us to interact if we have it.
But it's totally possible that we're just reading the situation wrong, and Zachary was just like, hey, I'm at the table with 3 blue players. They will deal with each other, and I can just sit back and let my slicer do its thing.
And the Dark Ritualist noting here that this slicer is at 36 commander damage on the table so far. So
Actually,
that's a huge
tournament MVP slicer.
So some things that we want to mention to you guys while we're in this moment of because we can see here that Ben is like tanking a little bit during this turn. Any donations that are made to the stream today are getting donated by Eminence to Extra Life. So if you guys want to donate any tips, any bits, anything like that, channel subscriptions, all of it goes to Extra Life here. So make sure that you donate, send some money to help a good cause, and it would be greatly appreciated if you do so.
So appreciated. And actually, Ben not going to the tank at all, just untapping completely, swinging with Malcolm, swinging with Changeling Outcast, and then passing the turn to Alana, who gets their slicer and then continues with their turn.
Yeah, I'm assuming that Ben must have some removal in hand because if you're sitting here at 18 life, waiting for someone
10
to...
life, actually.
Or yeah, 10 life, but 18 commander damage.
Yeah.
Like one slicer hit takes you out the game. So to confidently pass like this, and with the amount of cards that we've seen drawn, you hope to have some way to remove the slicer.
Excellent call in chat by Damon MCG, noting that Ben has an immersion zone on board, ready to crack and go off on top of anybody else's win condition. So he is no longer the one going off first, he is going off second.
So it looks like the slicer is coming at Ben, and I think it's denoting that he's blocking with Tymna. We're going to find out here very shortly, though. Yeah, you can see Alana displaying where the attacks are going. Looks like we have Tymna going at Tivit, we have Op Agent going at Zach, and we have the slicer going at Ben.
What happened to the Archivist boy? Did he block a?
Yeah, he blocked.
Oh, we see a Notion Thief. The first hint of card advantage on Comedian's board.
Uncounterable Notion Thief.
Getting rid of this, hitting the Tymna trigger.
It's actually, yeah, and this is what Zain was referring to earlier with naming rogues and with the Cavern of Souls in your Tivit deck. And it kind of displays why Ian maybe didn't want to play the Tivit initially, because if you can drop this Notion Thief in, especially when Alana has a Tymna and Heuristic Study, this ends up being a huge play for Ian here, and maybe he'll be able to draw a bunch of cards, because notably, the Slicer has been ignoring him at the table, so his life total has not been getting pressured as much as Alana and Ben's.
Let's make it clear. Ian can't cast Tivit because Ian doesn't have the mana. Ian is just doing his best with 0 fast mana in a Tivit deck, which is ridiculous. Tivit is 6 mana, 3 and Esper. So that Notion Thief is Ian's only way of getting back into this game.
So it looks like you can see that Ben did sacrifice his Tymna here to block the Slicer so that we do not die on our turn. And the rest of the players don't have a lot of attackers, but now Ben has no more blockers for the Slicer. So Ian is free to take Ben out the game unless he has some way to win here at instant speed.
Yeah, notably, it may seem weird that we sacrifice the Tymna instead of the Changeling Outcast, but Changeling Outcast cannot block if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah,
unblockable, but can't block. Yep. Losing the Tymna was the only solution there.
Team Turn 3 is like, the Slicer subgame is incredible magic. It actually is making this game far more interesting than it normally would, because there's an entire game surrounded around the card Slicer itself.
Not to mention, if you take a nice little look at Zachary's life total, it is the highest in the game.
Like in my meta, like we don't draw cards or win the game. Like that's not a thing that happens. So I'm finally happy to see like Slicer as a deck, because I think it will work for what I'm playing in.
Not to mention, if we go over to the player, we can't really see here, but I'm almost positive that Zachary is close to going to discard with the amount of cards that they have not cast.
Yeah, and so just so you guys know, Seth R in the chat is actually our judge here at the feature match table. You can see him there. So he's updating us in the chat in real time about the game as it's going on. So you can see that Alana is thinking about the Tymna trigger, seeing if she wants to let Ian draw cards from this Tymna trigger. So the idea being that Ian needs to have some type of interaction to help with Ben's turn or something similar like that. So Alana may be trying to decide and saying, do I want Ian to have some cards, knowing that he has 3 cards in hand? And we know, because we have perfect information in this scenario, that Ian only has a Delay and an Enlightened Tutor. And the Enlightened Tutor can't activate, or it can't be cast, or you can cast it technically, but there's a opposition agent still live underneath that Think token on Alana's board. So, and if Ben does have a win here at instant speed, now would be the time to do it at Alana's end step, because Ian only has 1 mana available to him, which means that Delay cannot be cast. So Ben, if he has a win, could pick his timing very carefully here and pull something off. But we see Alana casting an Intuition.
Into the Graph Digger's Cage must have an answer.
Yeah, I would assume that we have some type of removal for the Graph Digger's Cage if you're going to cast this Intuition here.
Or if you're, going for Intuition for 3 removal spells for Slicer.
Or
I doubt it.
We could see something similar to like what Mitch did in the round before this, where maybe Alana is going to get the Intuition package, hope she gets an LED and has a tutor in hand, plays that tutor and cracks her own LED, and maybe tries to win with a different line. Yeah, she could get everything but an Underworld Breach. Maybe try to denote that she has it in hand. Someone gives her there's a lot of different ways that we could play out this Intuition here. I'm very, very curious to see who she picks here. No, we can see, is this a
Toxic Deluge?
Oh, interesting. And at 17 life, Alana has the mana to be able to pay for this. And Slicer,
it looks like this isn't being cast. Maybe we're just thinking about this from the deck. Yes.
Well, no, it's an Intuition pile.
Yes, Alana's just pulling this out of the deck, saying, "Hey, is this if I give this to one of you, will you give it to me? Is this something we want to do as a table, as a family?"
As a family. So yeah, trying to denote, I don't think Alana plays things like Fire Covenant. I don't think Alana plays Fire Covenant in her list. So like when it comes to removal here, if it's not spot removal, you have to get a board wipe like Toxic Deluge. And Alana wants to do something like that because she wants to get rid of this Notion Thief, this Slicer, this Malcolm, and everything else. The problem being though that Zachary has the mana to just hard cast the Slicer next turn and put the table on high alert all over again. So is Alana going to tap out to cast a Toxic Deluge to prevent Ben from dying? I don't know what the purpose of that would be. Let it go to Ian and then cast a Toxic Deluge when it comes back to you on your turn. But then if that's the case, well, she wouldn't, because if Ian swings and kills Ben, Zachary doesn't have enough damage to kill Alana unless he equips something to the slicer, which is a very real possibility. Such an interesting sub-game within this game here. That one card is making such a huge difference.
Definitely an awesome idea to just sit with cards in your hand and let this slicer go around the table until it gets back to your turn and you have exactly lethal, and then throwing all of those equipments on.
Yeah, thonking. We are not still thinking on the Tymna trigger. We are resolving an intuition, thinking on what cards we want to provide to the table. You can see here we're showing a bunch of different things, a bunch of different lines. We can actually cut to the player view here and see how they're politicking in these rounds. Just like a lot of different table talk, Ian, we know what cards we have in hand. You can see him just like hand shuffling here, having some conversations. Alana kind of has all the power right now, but Ben has a full grip.
Ben's just looking at everyone going like, I hope... Yeah, I'm not going to contribute to this conversation. I'm just waiting to pop off.
Yeah, we do know that Ben has an emergence zone in play. So Ben may very well have the win in hand and is waiting for Alana to expend a lot of resources and then at the last minute crack and try to win at instant speed. Edvin, I don't know how to say your name, but said, I didn't know Slicer was so competitive. Most of us didn't know. This is the first ever cEDH event that we're seeing a slicer being played, and it's top 16, and it was the only slicer deck in the...
there was two.
Oh, there was two slicer decks? Dang, there must be a slicer Discord out there that none of us know about that must be pretty active then.
You get around places.
So we're going to see here
we're looking
what
to see a selection here off this intuition.
This is the intuition pie. We see Savine's Reclamation, Underworld Breach, and then Diabolic Intent. So maybe we're trying to get the tutor here, or this. If I was the table here, I would just give the Savines, right, with the Grafdigger's Cage out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. You're just going to give the Savines here, because if you give the tutor here, this shows me that Alana might have Lion's Eye Diamond in hand when you're going to crack a pile like this, and not getting anything to combat the slicer means that we're probably trying to attempt a win attempt here. So if you're the table, she only has 2 cards left in hand. She needs to have removal for the Grafdigger's Cage, and you need to give her the Savines Reclamation. Unless
it looks like we were given the Diabolic Intent because Savines can't be cast from graveyard.
Yeah, well, the Savines can't be cast from graveyard, but there must have been a political play there to give Alana the tutor, because you remember they were talking and she was showing the table the Diabolic Intent. So I wonder if we had some political...
I wonder if they're going to try to sack the slicer. You can't do that.
Yeah, this will be interesting to see. But we can see Ben playing a dress down.
There it is. That's the tech. Now you can sacrifice that slicer.
No way. So we're going to Diabolic Intent the slicer, but why would we want to help Alana sack the slicer here instead of getting some type of spot
Because
removal?
Ben is in imminent danger of death from the slicer.
Very interesting play patterns here. A huge political play. Oh, Captain Moral Support saying Slicer is very popular in the Red Love Discord, where you see decks like Godo, Rionia, things like the Jax, right? The new mono red deck that came out of that one set. There's too many sets. I don't even know what it is. But yeah, so that's cool to see that Slicer's been in that Discord. And now we're going to Diabolic Intent, sacrificing the Slicer here, because notably, Slicer has no text now.
It's unfortunate to see Alana doing this after combat, because if Ben had known this was the intention, that intuition was in play and going to be a thing, we could have done this dress down before combat and saved Alana a couple of draws, or prevented Alana from a couple of draws, which doesn't exist anyway because of the Nose and Thief. Never mind.
Yeah. So we're going to see how this is going to play out now. But what would Alana be Diabolic Intenting for? She must have tried to convince the table that she was getting something.
Probably removal for the Grafdigger's Cage. Or if she has it in hand, maybe a Dockside. I don't know.
But what did we like? How did you let the table talk you into this Diabolic Intent, right? Like, you're getting a free tutor here, and Ben had to expend a card in order for you to do this.
I see Ben scheming over there. I see him scheming. He's tricking everyone here. I'm calling it now.
So, Ialu saying Slicer can't be sacrificed. You are correct, but there is a dress down in play, which means that the Slicer can be sacrificed now. So, it has no text. But it looks like we're not sacrificing the Slicer. We're sacrificing the Tymna. Okay, we have our judge coming in here.
So, Slicer can't be sacrificed. The effect that gives it that protection from sacrificing is a trigger, the trigger that gives it to the player.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's not an ability that the creature has.
So did we know this as a table? Like, is this why? Like,
No, the
so
Slicer player knew it. I knew it. Max knew it.
So Ben's dress down, he thought that this would allow us to sacrifice the slicer.
Oh my god.
What? Oh my god. So what?
We have a plan. That's why the Tymna draws didn't happen. That's why the Ristic study draws didn't happen. They had a plan to.
No way. Okay, so we have.
Slicer player smiling and nodding his way into
This
this
is
crazy.
This is absolutely insane. So Zach full on knew that Slicer cannot be sacrificed even when
Through
there's
a
a dress
dress
down in
down.
play. So you see Ian, Alana, and Ben all talking and politicking with each other, and Zach just sitting back, smiling, keeping his mouth shut. Ben expended a dress down, thinking it would turn off the Slicer's ability to let it be sacrificed with a diabolic intent. And Alana, casting her diabolic intent, trying to sacrifice the Slicer, being completely unable to, having to sacrifice her Tymna, and Ben losing out on that card. Zach just outplayed the table without saying a single
This
word.
criminal mastermind Zachary on Slicer just wasted 2 cards, 3
Three
cards if
cards.
you count the intuition, and
4.
oh my god.
And this Grafdigger's Cage is still around, so Alana can't even Savine's Reclamation out of the graveyard. So that Underworld Breach is just stuck there until we get some type of removal.
This 3-mana intuition was useless.
What an absolute rules battle. Funnily enough, I know Zachary is an L1 and I know Ben is an L1. So Ben just losing the judge battle here.
We now know who the superior judge is at the table. Oh, man. And now we can see, Ian enlightened tutoring into this opposition. Oh, no, because the dress down is still in play, so Ian gets his tutor off here.
here.
Wow.
What a horrible turn of events. This
Such-
dress down with no benefit is finally letting Ian crawl back into the game with a mana crypt, maybe?
Natural crunching. Zach is secretly Sun Tzu in the art of war. Oh, man. Slicer tier 1. The chat is going crazy right now. Spamming Slicers in the chat. Super cool to see this deck. Absolutely super insane big brain play. This might be the thing that changes the tide of the game.
There's no changing the tide. This has been the tide all game.
So dress down notably goes away at end step, and Slicer's trigger happens at upkeep for passing it, correct? So that means that Slicer is still getting passed and goaded through this dress down no matter what happens here. So this is such a crazy turn of events to happen in this game. Absolutely insane. This is definitely living up to be quite the feature match.
Yeah, this is what I signed up for. This is why we play cEDH.
This is why we host
You
tournaments.
guys
just-
laughed at me last night about this Slicer deck. I will be the one laughing.
Oh, man. So there's a very good opportunity here that we see this Slicer deck make it into the top 4 if we can just continue to implement this game plan. Look at the chat is spanning the scissors for the Slicer.
Can we get like Cutman theme playing? Is that like copyright? I don't know.
Man. Yeah, get those scissors in the chat, people. Get those scissors in the chat. All right, so this, and we can see here too that this Diabolic Intent is still being presented on the stack.
Grabbing the Mystic Remora from the Enlightened Tutor. So instead of going for some mana to get Tivit on board, like a Jeweled Lotus or something like that, we're going for the Mystic Remora, kind of predicting the impending win attempt from Ben, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Ben expending that dress down there is actually going to be huge for him because we could have used that to prevent some actual win attempts in the future here. And now we don't have the dress down to turn off the double strike from the Slicer either when we have no blockers. So Ian is completely incentivized here to swing the Slicer out at Ben and force Ben to go off. And we know that Ian has a delay in hand, which can prevent Ben's win condition if Ben doesn't have any protection. So this might have been a huge misplay from Ben Loeb here.
Yeah, notably the dress down's gone, so the agent, which was stopping Ben from winning most likely, he can't deal with that right now.
Yeah, so we're going to have to see how this plays out now. Yeah, that dress down would have been, oh man. You can see here too, Ben just adjusted all of his lands in play to put the Emergence Zone on top.
And cracking that Emergence Zone.
We're
with
cracking
the
it right now. Oh man, here we go. At end step, everyone is tapped out. We've cracked the Emergence Zone.
This is his window. He was scheming. Maybe he did know.
Yeah, maybe we did. Did we underestimate Ben?
Tell everyone I have this dress down that I can cast. That's all I can do. And then let other players assume.
Yeah.
Because he is a judge. Maybe he also knew this.
Yeah, look at this. So Ian now doesn't have the mana for delay. Alana is tapped out. The dress down has resolved. The op agent is gone. Ben could crack a doomsday pile right here and try to win the game. This could be it. Let's see what happens. Oh, man. This is very exciting. Maybe Ben outplayed us. Maybe he's Sun Tzu. We will find out.
Edvin, make sure you catch the rest of this game that you missed on the VOD afterwards, and this will be going up to our YouTube channel eventually. If you missed any part of this amazing game, it will be available for the rest of time to watch.
Natural Crunch saying, anime-type moment if Ben wins this match right now. Let's see what happens here. So the dress down is still in play. All the creatures in play don't have any text. So Ben, it's dressed down. Ben is shaking. We're going to see what happens. Grand Abolisher. Okay.
No way.
Rhystic Study trigger from Alana. Let's see if Ben lets the draw happen.
And he knows that Ian's not drawing into any gas. He's just going to draw a Mystic Remora.
Yeah, and if Ben tries to win with something like a like Thassa's Oracle line or something similar to that, Dress Down notably is an enchantment. So if Ben can find some type of way to remove his own Dress Down after he tutors, then he can play his Thassa's Oracle and still win the game. So we're going to see here what we got. We have a Grim Tutor on the stack. The Grand Abolisher has resolved too, so that means that there's no point of interaction here, and notably, Alana has already used her Adawara as a land for turn, so there's no more channel lands in her deck that can prevent a win condition at this point.
Was Ben the true judge mastermind all along? Did he know how this slicer interaction worked? Did he just exploit the table at a level never seen before?
Some people have actually noticed in the chat that the Abolisher doesn't do anything here because it's not Ben's turn.
Okay. Yeah, clown emojis in the chat.
Yeah, put some clown emojis in there. We messed up on that one. Yeah. That's pretty funny, actually. Yeah. All right, so it looks like this Grand Abolisher is just a blocker then for the slicer that's going to be coming into play here. And Ben might just be setting up for a bigger turn here in the future. Yeah, there we go. Some clown emojis in the chat.
That's what I like to see.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, so let's see what Ben gets here with the Grim Tutor. Grim Tutor is not revealed, actually, correct?
Yep, straight to hand.
It's not revealed, straight to hand. So we won't know what it is unless Ben is going to crack these two treasures to play whatever he intends to play right now. We could also remove the slicer if we think it buys us enough time to get another turn. If Ben Grim Tutors for some type of removal piece, we can remove that slicer now, and then it forces Zach to have to hard cast the slicer again, which takes him off of his game plan quite a bit.
Seems like we're responding to the Risky Study trigger on top of the Grand Abolisher.
Yeah. Team turn 3, bringing up something very significant here. There is a Mystic Remora on the top of Ian's library, so maybe Ben is wanting to cast the spells that he has now, not feeding the fish to help Ian gain more cards, and hoping that we can get some way to remove this slicer and keep ourselves in the game. Our Tymna notably had to be sacrificed in order to block a slicer earlier in the game, so we don't have the same card advantage that we had earlier when the slicer was getting passed around the table. Because of the Emergence Zone, the Grim Tutor can be played at instant speed.
Incredible.
Yeah, which is why that we would be responding
to
the
trigger. So we're still on top of the Risky Study trigger. Incredible. Okay,
yes. Cool. And it looks like we're resolving that Ristic Study trigger now.
And letting Ian draw?
Oh, yes, because...
coming through.
Well, there's still a dress down in place, so the Notion Thief doesn't have any text.
Doesn't do anything. Oh, my lord.
Yeah.
He thought of it all.
What an interesting... Like, this turn was action-packed. There was a lot going on. And to see how this is going on, it looks like we're now moving to the end step, which means that we're going to sacrifice this dress down. Dress down, not as cool as Slicer. You can sacrifice it.
Drawing that Mystic Remora, and it's going to get slapped down immediately because we know that the only thing in Ian's hand is a delay and something else that
it looks
I'm not
like
sure of.
We're tapping out.
Tivit coming through.
Tivit coming through.
The 1v1. Slicer versus Tivit.
Yeah, I mean, if Ian's able to generate enough treasures here to, continuously be able to cast Tivit and block, then Ian is who's eventually going to have to face Zach in the 1v1 against the Slicer, if this is how this game is going to go. Now, we'll know immediately because Ian's going to, pressure Ben's life total here probably and swing this Slicer in at him, which opens Zach up to killing Ben with the Slicer.
Yep.
So we'll see how this plays out, though. Or Ian could choose to swing at Alana here and pressure her life total as well if they think they have another turn to get this around the table.
We're definitely going to see a predicament that Zachary has probably found himself in multiple times before, where you have lethal on everybody, but you need to be very selective about who you decide to kill, because Commander is a 4-person game. Reducing that number of people from 4 to 3 is exponentially different. It's changing the format. It's changing how many people are at the table, and it is very easily king-making someone if you do it incorrectly.
It could be you could misplay horribly by removing the wrong player at the wrong time.
Yeah, threat
assessment here is key, and it's really hard to practice because you just need to play a lot of games to understand what could happen.
There's so much
it's like
variability.
who do you think would be the threat at the table? Is it important to take Ben off of his game plan, knowing that there's a Grand Abolisher in play? He has to block it with the slicer. Does he have a win on his turn? Most likely not. Alana kind of punting with that intuition there, not having a way to.
That's not true. The Breach and the Savines is in yard. One removal spell on the Grafdiggers puts you as in a winning position.
Yeah, absolutely. But, knowing what that play pattern was like and having to expend 3 spells there and a tutor, we don't know what could be coming, right? So is Alana the person that you want to pressure on the board? You have the option to eliminate one player in this turn cycle. You either can eliminate Ben or you can eliminate Alana just by swinging here.
Not to mention that we still have a live diabolical intent from Alana. We don't know what she grabbed. And she had the knowledge that her plan was not working when this diabolical intent went through.
I want to know what the chat thinks. Who would you remove in this situation, Alana or Ben?
I think that if I was in this situation, I would probably remove Alana.
I would remove Alana.
Yeah,
Especially because Ben has a blocker.
But no, it looks like Ian's going to pressure Zach to try to remove Ben from the game.
Give the choice to Zach by deciding to get rid of Ben's blocker.
Miss Hodem saying, one thing to note about the commentary in this game is that absolutely none of it is talking about what Zach is going to do. The reason for that is because Zach doesn't have to do anything.
Zach had one game plan going into this. Play Slicer, play Stacks Pieces. That's it.
And so now we can see that Ian's playing that Mystic Remora, getting those card advantage pieces into play, and has this Tivit now to block the Slicer. And now he's putting the onus on Zach here to try to...
We see a Goblin Welder.
Okay, so we must have passed over to Zach's turn.
Yes. And we see a Goblin Welder. Alana is reading it.
Yeah, Natural Crunch saying Zach has only casted 4 spells this game. Yeah, it was Grafdigger's Cage, Slicer,
Pyretic Ritual.
Pyretic Ritual, yeah.
And
Chromox.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But, Zach doesn't really have to do much because the Slicer's doing most of the work for him.
Zach doesn't need to do anything.
What I want to see from Zach here, actually, instead of equipment, I want to see like a massive land destruction or Blood Moon or something just coming down right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would actually be insane if you watch Zach put something down like a Blood Moon or something that just takes the rest of the table completely off of their mana. If you look notably, there's not a single basic in play. So turning all their lands to mountains, unless Alana has like a Dockside or something to help, get her back into the game, like that would be detrimental to the table.
I would put money on the fact that Zach doesn't even need to cast this Goblin Welder right now. It's just so he doesn't have to discard.
Team turn 3 notably letting us know that Goblin Welder can actually protect the cage if it gets back to Zach's turn because he can reanimate it basically from the graveyard to put it back into play. The problem being, though, that it has summoning sickness, so Alana could go for her win here if she's not removed from the table. And Ian, notably not swinging the Slicer at Alana, it would have given Zachary the ability to take Alana completely out of the game here. But instead now, it looks like Ben's putting his phone down on the table, maybe trying to represent it as a blocker for the Slicer.
Yeah, I would do the same.
Let's see what the table is doing right now, too. Oh, it looks like...
he might be going to the bathroom or something.
Yeah, it looks like Seth's going to update us in chat here shortly about what's going on. Oh, Fratbro here, complimenting Crunch on his Joda list, building it right now, too. Would love to pick your brain on some of it if you're open. I will ask that you guys keep all casual EDH talk out of the chat. Sorry, Joda Crunch is a casual deck. No.
Unbelievable.
Oh, man.
So it looks like we don't have lethal yet on either of the players because Slicer is only dealing 6, if I'm correct, and we don't have lethal on Alana quite yet, but we do have the ability to take Ben out of the game. But whether that's the correct option or not, I'm very curious as to how many cards Ben has in hand.
I'm actually going to pull up this Slicer list here. We got the Goblin Welder. There's like a Phyrexian Revoker he could play. Magus. Fury is in this deck. Slowbat is in this deck. Some interesting cards. A lot of equipment I'm seeing. I see many of the good swords, Trinsphere, Evasion for Slicer, the Grafdiggers. Pretty good stuff.
So just to clarify something that happened, so we had a bathroom break there, and there was a judge question asking if Slicer was put into the graveyard, could the Goblin welder it into play with the Grafdigger's Cage still out? And the answer from the judges was that yes. So if someone tries to remove this Slicer or destroy it in any way, Zach basically wanted to know, can I put it in my graveyard and get it back with my welder?
Very interesting.
Yeah. So a very, very different vibe.
Yeah, if any of you are curious where we're at in the game, we have Ben on 6 cards, Alana on 6 cards, and both Comedian and Zachary on only 1 card.
Zach only having
Zach
one
only
card?
has one card in hand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was the case.
Which is extremely strange because it feels like there should be more.
All right, so it looks like we passed our turn. We sung the slicer at Alana, which, I think is the correct play here. We're going to find out now. Ben getting another untap step, which we did not think was possible. Ben could take Alana out of the game here as well, especially if he thinks Alana has some type of interaction for him. And it looks like Ben is swinging the slicer at Alana. This could be a huge swing in momentum here. If Ben can get Alana off of the table, he only has to fight through Ian's delay, which Ian can cast because he has 2 treasures in hand, gets the opposition agent off the board. This could be huge for Ben here.
Especially with Alana, with no available mana. Absolutely none. Those 6 cards in hand mean nothing when you have nothing to cast them with.
So, Tristan, you can see that Zachary has a Chromox in play, so he has something to sack with the welder to get the slicer back, which is what we were referring to. They were just asking if it works with through the cage. So, yeah, look at Alana. Let's go to the player view here. I want to see what's going on here. Look at Ben smirking. Ben's like, I know exactly what I'm doing. It's up to you guys to decide how we play this out.
All right, we have a bunch of treasures on board with 2 connects. With despite Tymna not being on the field, Malcolm is still generating.
And Alana's picking up her permanence. Alana has
is
died to the slicer due to commander damage. And notably, Ben has a Thassa's Oracle
in hand.
No
and we
way.
are presenting the win here. Didn't even need to tutor.
And a demonic consultation.
Absolutely.
Is this it? Does the table have nothing? No, wait, Ian has a delay. Can
He has a delay and 2 treasure tokens to cast it.
Does Ben have any protection for the spell? We're going to find out right now. Ian, we know he has the delay in hand. Are we going to send it off?
We have a delay and a demonic tutor in hand.
Let's see what we got.
That's not demonic tutor. What is that?
Okay, here we go. You see Ian representing it, talking through the table. Zain is just returning from a bathroom break. Ben has a Thoracle win on the stack.
Alana is dead.
So, all right.
Died.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And Ben had the Pact of Negation to protect it. So the delay is not going to resolve, but Ian gets to draw a card. What card did Ian draw? It doesn't look like it's anything to answer it. So Ben, ask if my pact resolves. Now there's Demonic Consultation back on the stack. And Alana is out of this game, so she can't interact anymore.
And Ian is out of mana.
And Ben is going to exile his whole
And the
library.
game is
and the
over.
game is done.
That's it. What a game. What a game.
Absolutely
Incredible.
insane. Anime comeback. We were wrong. We were all wrong. We said you should remove Alana, not remove Ben from the game. And Ben was clearly the person to swing at there. Zach completely missing the mark there with the slicer attack. He could have eliminated Ben from the game and chose not to, instead to pressure Alana's life total, which allowed Ben to take Alana out of the game, meaning that she had no interaction to stop Ben whatsoever, and Ben able to completely close that game out with the Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation, which we must have drawn for turn there because
never tutored for.
Well,
Yeah.
we had the Grim Tutor, but we didn't have the mana after the Grim Tutor to Thoracle Consult. So
Let's get Ben in here. I want to know if he knew that dress down interaction. Did
Yeah.
he trick everyone? Is he the absolute mastermind?
that's absolutely insane.
Get Ben in here.
So what a wild turn of events and a wild way to yeah. What a wild turn of events there. Like to think about like how that went out and the way that we cracked the Emergence Zone after the dress down to cast our Grim Tutor, which by the way, we've seen Grim Tutor lead to 2 wins in a row today, which, maybe more of you should be slotting this card into your deck.
No,
Emergence Zone, on the other hand, I don't know, but
Grim Tutor wasn't at instant speed. It wasn't at sorcery speed this time. It was at instant speed, which makes it not much better, but it's still a good card.
yeah. So deck lists aren't going to be posted yet. They will be posted at the end of this event. We don't want the deck list to be live because it gives players the opportunity to look at their opponent's deck list before the game. So all deck lists will be posted after this event. Luckily, this was the last game of the top 16 here. So now we are moving to the finals pod. Ben, notably, only losing 1 game this entire tournament, has now made it to the Final Four and has 6 wins under his belt.
6 wins and a draw, an absolutely great showing.
6 wins and a loss. 6
yeah.
wins and a loss.
Yeah.
But absolutely wild. And with Tymna Malcolm, a deck that didn't have a lot of representation this week. I think Ben might have been the only one that played it.
That's a good point, yeah.
So and as the primer author of this deck, really like putting his money where his mouth is and saying, I will show you guys that this deck has legs. And Esper is not getting enough respect in the meta. And we can see that here with Comedian on Tivit and Ben on Tymna Malcolm. Absolutely wild game. Absolutely wild ending there. That was incredible. No, that's okay. So we're going to have Ben come in here. We're going to talk with Ben about how this game went. So here, why don't you come in here, Ben? Okay, so Ben, you are performing right now. You're performing the best out of any player here in the tournament. Here, you're bringing Tymna Malcolm. Tymna Malcolm, a deck that you originally are one of the primer authors for, right? For the deck that's on the database.
Right. Yeah.
You call the deck mulling for Malcolm.
That's right.
Why do you call it that?
Malcolm, people underrate having mana in the command zone. I mean, people are doing it with Rog these days, but having both Malcolm and Tymna means you have both mana and cards in the command zone, which is really everything. So you're just prepared for everything. And so by putting Malcolm on turn 1, Tymna on turn 2, you just set yourself up for a late game very well.